Welcome to the studio at That Nerd Show. I am Marcus Blake, and we are speaking with director Jeff. I'm sorry, Bemiss. I apologize if I mispronounced that.
Okay.
But we're talking about the film Missing in Brooks County. Jeff, thank you very much for interviewing with us. We're glad to have you here. And this was one of the most interesting documentaries of this film festival, especially we're here based in Texas, but in Texas being a border state, it deals with a lot of border issues. I want you to tell us a little bit about this film and how you came to the project.
Thanks, Marcus. The film follows two families who come to Brooks County, Texas, in search of their loved ones who went missing after crossing the U.S.-Mexico border, as hundreds do every year in Brooks County, sadly, and thousands along the entire U.S.-Mexico border. Lisa Malamat, my co-director, and I, we actually started this project, I guess, based on a StoryCorps story. StoryCorps, that those amazing little documentary series that's on NPR.
Oh yeah.
There was a story on a forensic scientist at Baylor University in Waco, named Lori Baker, who was doing exhumations in Brooks County. And Lisa and I were really moved by the story. Lisa has lived in Mexico before, and I have a sister-in-law from Mexico, and we just decided to reach out to Lori, and she said, "Come on out," and she took us down to this place called Falfurrias. And Lisa and I said, "Okay, can you? Where's the border?" She said, "Oh no, there's no border here. This is Brooks County. This is 70 miles north of the border, but this is where the problem is."
Right.
And that was the beginning of Lisa and I realizing that really what was happening in Brooks County was the story that needed to be told.
Right. I've heard about it, but it's one of those things you kind of hear in passing. You don't really know much about it until you kind of do your research or see a documentary. So, but yeah, it's a very interesting problem of, with all of these, I want to say, players involved, from, government, patriots who are trying to, guard the border, and people looking for a better life. I don't want to give anything away, but you talk about it's the search for family members, the kind of the main characters of this. But you talk about it that it isn't just one person. I mean, it happens a lot. Did you find if any of that ever really gets resolved? I mean, do people find their family, or is it most of the time that they don't?
Well, they do sometimes. Sadly, a lot of times, though, there is no closure for the families. And in the film, there's kind of two sides to this. One of the sides is the Eddie Canales side, who runs the South Texas Human Rights Center. And he puts water, life-saving barrels of water out in the Texas brush. And he also goes on searches for people who are missing. Then there's the other, and that's more of a rescue if somebody's actively missing.
Right.
Then there's the other side of it, which is the forensic side of it, Kate Spradley side of it, where she is exhuming anonymously buried migrants who have basically no chance of identification because they were buried without DNA having taken. So as she says, in her words, it's like walking off the face of the earth, and their families will never know what happened to them. So she is trying to exhume, identify, and repatriate every anonymously buried border crosser in South Texas and give closure to those families.
See, I think that's got to be the biggest problem is, I mean, you touch on something that most of us don't realize. It's not like where you have a little bit of evidence if somebody goes missing. If they go missing, that's it. I mean, it's almost like they never existed, and who tells that story? But we kind of a recurring theme where we talk about the journey of a filmmaker, what you come into, what you think at the beginning of the story, and then what you actually learn. What was the biggest thing that of your journey in this film that you learned, or how did your perspective change?
Well, I mean, it was a journey. So Lisa and I, well, at this point, I think we've spent about 6 years on this project. So we, I mean, we used to joke that every time we went back to Brooks County to film, the ending of the story got further away because
Yeah,
it just got really complicated, and the deeper we looked, the more there was to see. Um, I think there were many things we learned, but I think one of them was that um, the families of the missing are the people who suffer the most. And they're not all in faraway places like Central America or Mexico. I mean, many of them are here. They're Americans. They're our neighbors. They're, across the street. And some of them might be undocumented. And so if you they can't really go to law enforcement. They
right,
can't really they never really feel that they're able to do all that they would like to do to find their missing loved ones. And I think that's very painful. And when I think about all the resources that we dispatch in the US when a person with an American birth certificate goes missing,
right.
um, I just can't imagine how painful and haunting it must be to not be able to have those resources available. And that's something I didn't expect to be a part of this story.
Yeah, I think it also it lends to the conversation that immigration is there are no simple answers, and we need to quit trying to simplify it. It is complicated. It's a mixed bag of a lot of things, but at the heart of it is it's a very human issue. Okay, and whether they're undocumented or not, you're dealing. Where's your humanity when you're dealing with this? And that's kind
Yeah,
of the thing that annoys me more than anything else is people trying to simplify it, and it's like
yeah,
there isn't,
yeah.
and there. Um, but that's news and talking heads and people who don't really who have never experienced what you've experienced.
Well, and I just want to say that the idea of this film for Lisa and I was really not to make a political film, and I don't think that it is. It's a humanitarian film. It's a
Right,
human film. But we found that a lot of people, no matter what spectrum of politics they happen to inhabit, most of them don't want to see people die.
right.
Most people. So that's good. But we also found that most people, unless you live in one of these places where this is happening, a lot of people don't know that this is going on, and they
Right.
don't know the size of it.
Um, you talk about that the ending kept getting further and further away, and I know that you have a film put together. Do you feel like this is just the beginning, or maybe the first chapter of this story? That something you will revisit? There'll be a part two.
That's a very interesting question. I don't know. I mean, it's possible. It's always possible. Um, it is true though that when we got into this story, I think we probably have 400 hours of footage or so, and the film is only 80 minutes.
Right.
So there were a lot of stories that we came across that we couldn't fit into the film. I think one could spend one's entire life just doing stories about the border, about border policy. So yeah, there's plenty there.
Well, I think there's also another story there is, the people you interview and stuff with all this extra footage, you're giving a name to people that have gone missing or, the name to the family. You're telling their story. when most people would not know anything. So I would be very curious as a spectator to see the rest of the footage, whether it be on a YouTube channel or something, just individual little shorts, or a problem that most people, again, don't realize all that's involved with it. Um, so, so what's next for you with this film?
Well, Lisa Malamat and I are making a project out of the Impact campaign. We're trying to run a sort of outreach and impact campaign to, get the film seen by people who maybe are involved in making border policy. Lisa and I feel that if lawmakers could meet the families of the missing, they would feel differently about the policies that they're creating. So we're hoping the film can be a bit of a proxy for that. And so we're hoping to get the film in front of legislators and leaders.
I think, yeah, that's kind of what leading into what I was actually going to ask. So you kind of answered two questions. Um, I think that's how you start the conversation and making them see the human side of it more than anything else. And again, it's a complicated, scenario. There is no easy thing about it except there's a human face to it, and you're still dealing with human lives and people who want a better life more than anything else. So, but it was a great film. I mean, again, only hearing about Brooks County, but not knowing enough about it. Thank you very much. And I think I think you guys did an incredible job, telling that story. Especially if it's just part one. I'm just dropping little hints there for you. So we got time for one more question. It's the question we ask all of our filmmakers. Your nerdy question. If you could have a weapon of choice or a superpower from within the nerd universe to fight the forces of evil, what would you choose?
I think I would have to choose invisibility.
Interesting. Yeah,
And it would also help me make documentaries.
I know. Wait, it's funny that you talk about that. We've had a reoccurring theme of between that and teleportation, all the stuff that you can get done as a filmmaker, and especially as a documentarian. I mean, if you were invisible and they won't talk to you, that would come in handy.
If I still lived in Los Angeles and dealt with that traffic, teleportation. I like that.
I agree. I can imagine. So, well, thank you very much for talking with us. Again, great film and good luck with it. And I hope more politicians who deal with immigration see it and understand that it's a bigger issue.